So I ran out of camera time, and I was just talking about Route 66 and how everyone were basically everyone along his path that he ran across, the Americans were adult-sized children that hadn't been raised properly, besides the Amish people or whatever, the farmers that he came across. They were wonderful. And their children were healthy, they weren't overweight, they were growing their own food, and living a healthy lifestyle. Whereas the other people were not living a healthy lifestyle. And they
were looking for extremes. We don't want
No.
just
No, I'm not saying that all
stereotyping
Americans besides
the way
Amish people are
Canadians tend to do,
up.
or the way French people tend to do. Well, British people do it too, which is amazing, but it's amazing hypocrisy. But Canadians, it's amazing hypocrisy too. We're so American, it's incredible.
You want to talk about that one first?
Matt Damon, Christian Bale, yeah, sure, exactly right. So Pauline started playing this, and they were talking about it being about 65, 66, somewhere around there. And it was like Ford versus Ferrari, that's what it's called. And I'm willing to bet it's about the Ford Mustang or the AC Cobra. Well, it turned out, you see, Ford Mustang, I think, was my favorite car around that point in time. And then I had a road race that a little after that. And the two cars were AC Cobra, I believe that's a Ford product, and a Ford GT or GT. Ford GT stands for Gran Turismo, I believe. So, and I got it wrong, but my next guess was going to be the GT Ford. I just didn't get around. That's what it was about, right? So it was Ford trying to outdo Ferrari on European racetracks, and they did it for a while there, for the second half of the 60s. So Matt Damon plays the guy who coordinated the thing for Ford. Name's slipping me, but it starts with an S. And Christian Bale plays this car racer. I won't say how the movie ends, but it more or less ends with him doing well. I would tell you that. And Christian Bale, I've never seen him so impressive. I don't know if he comes from England originally, but he's playing kind of like an ethnic Englishman, like not the Oxbridge accent, or not the stage accent or the Queen's English accent like you get with the BBC announcers. And he's really convincing. I kind of guess that he's from that background, but and it was slightly different energy that you get from him sometimes. It was a little bit more in your face, and it's hard for actors to do other energy. I just used to think he was always playing Christian Bale, but
I was impressed with both of them.
Well, Matt Damon is, I think, the best I've ever seen him. I don't know if that's his natural accent. He always has had maybe a bit of a drawl, I'm not sure, but I think he actually comes from Boston. Doesn't he come from Boston?
He did an amazing job.
Yeah. So he's playing the guy with a drawl. I don't know the guy that he's playing. He seemed to come from the South. Car racing is big in the South and stuff like that. So it's not Sebring. What the hey is it? Anyway.
My parents used to like to watch car racing together. And it was when I caught them when I was a teenager. They seemed sheepish. Because it's not something my dad was a Christian philosopher, and he wouldn't have wanted to own up to that, right? But even though he was a mechanic and stuff, he'd had training in that, and he'd farmed, and so this wouldn't be so unusual.
In the cars. Yeah. I used to wonder why that's so different.
They'd watch the racing together, and they all the time. Whenever there was racing on, they were watching it.
Yeah.
Anyway, are you done with that?
Anyway, it's a pretty good movie. If you like that kind of thing, it's recommended. Yeah, playing a guy called Shelby. So, yeah.
Day the Earth Stood Still. Very much recommended.
It's a classic.
Yep.
And unlike so many classics that you hear about, like Ingmar Bergman movies and stuff like that, this is actually worth watching. So
James remembered the name. I thought that the big robot was Klaatu.
Yeah, but it's the little.
But it's the
alien or whatever.
Alien person.
Klaatu. Klaatu.
And I remembered it was like I said, No, first I didn't even think it was the robot. I thought, no, I think that's just a phrase that they said in the language, Klaatu, Verana, Niptu or something. And, which I don't know if I got that right now. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But it turns out, yeah, it was Klaatu was the guy. James got it totally right. And
The robot's Gort.
the robot's Gort.
Wow, that's important. Yeah. There's going to be a test on this.
Very good. I watched this for the first time with my dad a long time ago when I was a teenager, and he really enjoyed this movie. It's a little bit slow, but it's good. The acting's good, and I'd highly recommend it. So
Nowadays, after all the Mission Impossible imitations, I kind of like slow. It's just sometimes if you watch guy movies nowadays, it's just you feel as though you're getting wrenched around in a car, you know.
Oh, and we own this one now because we got this.
Yeah.
So
A library sale or something.
Yeah, library sale or something. And we own this one now too.
Oh yeah.
But
Another sci-fi thing. Yeah.
Ex Machina. And can you explain the title? where
Yeah, well,
that
that's
comes
just
from?
short for Deus Ex Machina, and I think that's a mixture of Greek and Latin. The Deus, I believe, is Latin. Ex is Latin, and Machina would be taken from the Greek. We get our word machine from the same thing. So I'm going to be using a false friend, but I'll say it kind of translating as God in the machine. It's not exactly a machine. It'd be some sort of thing jerry-rigged to bring a god out from the skies, as it were. Used in classical theater. I don't know if the Greeks actually used it or whether it was the Romans. The Romans did some amazing things. They actually had lip syncing. You know, they'd have something almost like opera or musical theater, and there'd be people out dancing, and they'd be doing the Beyonce thing. They'd be lip syncing, and they'd have a chorus singing and stuff like that. It's amazing, some of the stuff they had. We're talking about car races. A little bit later on, Byzantium, which is Middle Ages, they'd have big races. So the Circus Maximus, this is 2,000 years ago in Rome, held, I figure, 250,000 people. That's 250,000 people. Might be an overestimate, but it was huge. The circus, that was the Circus Maximus, the Colosseum, they probably figured out reasonably well. It held maybe 50,000 people. Well, that's incredible. That's like there are stadiums nowadays. You know, the one up in Calgary, McMahon Stadium, doesn't hold that much unless they really stuff it, maybe with extra seating and stuff like that. So it's you know, like we tend to forget that, you know, people are people, and if they get in an urban situation, they'll do certain things. There'll be certain limitations when it comes to technology, but they're amazing with their aqueducts and stuff. It's 2,000 years ago. So yeah.
So the robot android, I don't know, not really android, is she?
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't
you
matter.
know,
I don't know.
it's
Anyway.
more about the story than it is about the
Yeah.
you know,
Ava.
the technique,
Anyway.
the technology.
So, and you were talking about Ava's name, what it would mean?
Well, I don't know what AVA means, but strictly speaking, what it comes from. But when you pronounce it that way, that's the way you should pronounce Eva. What we say, Eva, and that's you know, like Eve, and Eve. Her name means life. You know, she's.
And Caleb means dog, and what was the other guy's name?
Caleb. I love Caleb. What was
Nathan.
the other guy's name?
Gift.
Nathan. That means gift. Yeah.
So anyway, and
think they
Nathan
were-
was very
I think
gifted.
they
He
were
was able to
planning
create
that.
this.
They had Hebrew names.
These robots that look like perfect people, and
I think they would have thought it was too obvious if they had a guy robot called Adam or something like that.
I don't
But-
know. I think that the story needed them to be female because it's bit of. I mean, Nathan keeps one of the android women as a. I mean, you can't call her a wife. She'd be more of a concubine, right?
Yeah.
But she's she also cooks and serves him, whatever, right?
Yeah,
She's
that's
just she
well,
does
that's
everything. So she's
concubine or a bond woman or something like that.
yeah. And so honestly, she's not even able to talk. He hasn't given her the ability because he doesn't want her to, and it's really sad. So watching that, right? I mean, so it's honestly the movie is about women and, you know, the treatment of women from certain men by certain men too. right? So it's
That's
not
ultimately
only
what it's about.
Yeah.
It's not really about the technology.
No, because I mean, you're not leaving the movie thinking, oh well, I guess robots are going to take over the Earth or whatever. I mean, one of them's God. I shouldn't give away the
No.
ending. Watch it.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, she's no Gort though, because apparently Gort, he could do anything. And
Gort was incredible. He had a basilisk stare that could melt stone. In fact, as it did.
Yes.
So, very impressive.
Anyway, but I put these together. You should have seen an obvious theme here. Because the first one that I talked a lot about, that he actually went and saw a robot, a real robot in Japan. And the robot was dancing and stuff, and he's like, we have enough,
but it was
dancers.
Cute. They made sure it was smaller than the average.
He said, even the robots now don't want to work. They just want to dance.
Yeah. It was made kid size. It was for kids.
Yeah, it was
now
cute.
That I think about it, yeah.
So anyway, that's all I have to say about these. Watch it,
So
watch
you ready
it,
for
and
a
watch
book
it all. Watch everything that I showed you here today. Very good.
Book review. Obsession by John Douglas and Mark Olshaker, which means that Mark Olshaker actually wrote the words. John Douglas came up with the concepts ghostwritten. So Pauline and I, this is like admitting a guilty non-pleasure or something like that. We'd watch Criminal Minds every so occasionally, So, and this guy's work is what that is based on. So this guy was a profiler, and I think he was the guy, along with maybe a couple other people, maybe it's just him, who started off the FBI's program of profiling. That might have been some of the first in the so-called civilized world, maybe the first. And it's interesting how uninteresting it is, really, the book. I don't know if he's really, he's talking about some of the profiling he did, and he's going, yeah, I could have done that. You could have done that. You and I, that might have done better, So I don't know whether they've actually caught someone, by profiling. And maybe that's for the better, like, oh, this guy looks, he's got a unibrow, and therefore he's the Unabomber or something like that, It just kind of makes you a little bit uncomfortable. If it's a person's occupation or something like that, well, that's, but the way a person looks, profiling's kind of thing. But I wouldn't recommend it. You can see I got this, I think it was at a library sale. I just wanted to fill a bag or something like that. And they do use the term unsubstantiated.
So you enjoyed
suspect.
that anyway?
I enjoyed it okay. I don't think I'd read it knowing what was in it. It's a little bit of a disappointment, I've got to say. But there we go. So can I say hi to our Swiss friends out there?
Yes, thank you, Switzerland.
Thank you for sending Roger Federer and Swiss cheese, a great idea. Lots of other things, like I'm not going to dismiss Switzerland that way. Like
yes,
it's,
I had wonderful comments
civilized
given
countries
to me
in the world
by somebody in Switzerland.
And we really appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed eating Hubbard squash, if that's what you enjoyed about my last post. And we enjoy eating squash.
Yeah.
Very healthy in the winter squash.
It really was exciting.
I was going to talk
people
about
watching
this squash.
from the other side of the world.
Squash, if you, Switzerland person, if you enjoy winter squash, know that they hybridize. So if you're planting two different kinds of squash, they will cross-pollinate, and your pink pumpkin might cross with, it looks to me here, like a kaboka squash that it crosses.
The funny thing is I prefer the taste of pumpkin. So you had some squash that were mixed.
You like kaboka squash?
Yeah.
I
like kaboka. Yeah. But you had some stuff that was mixed with pumpkin, you figured, right? Or were you figuring kaboka was just mixed with pumpkin?
No, I had spaghetti squash that was mixed with pumpkin.
There we go, and it was way better than spaghettis.
Way better than regular spaghetti.
Don't expect
squash.
the hybrid to be worse,
No, I mean, if you're growing something like this and you see this, then don't go, oh, this squash is poisonous all of a sudden. No, it's just hybridized. And they'll do that. Squash, they cross-pollinate. And the babies, maybe you won't see it the first generation. Maybe you'll see it a couple down the road and you'll go, wait a minute, something's different with you. But it doesn't mean that it's not edible. It could be better. Like James was saying, the spaghetti squash that was crossed with the pumpkin, tasted way better than regular spaghetti squash, and it
Much more
looked better.
tasty.
It was
It looked
orange
better,
inside.
yeah,
It was much more attractive.
Didn't look anemic.
So there was nothing wrong with that. It was actually a better product.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you go to the supermarket, you want uniformity. Everybody, that's what they expect. You go to McDonald's and you get a hamburger, a quarter pounder for McDonald's in one town. You go to the next town, you want it to be exactly the same.
Tim Hortons, always the same.
Always
coffee.
the same. Everywhere you're going, you know what you're getting, I guess. And so that's what people strive for in our society. Is you go to certain places, you get the same thing. So you go to the grocery store, you get a spaghetti squash. It's always going to look like a spaghetti squash.
Sure. You go to McDonald's, you want the same lousy burger.
Yes.
You want the same
But
lousy fries.
you would actually, if they didn't have uniformity, you'd probably be better off. But you don't want surprises. You don't want a chance that it won't be as good, so you don't accept things that are actually better, which is strange.
No.
This might be better. Why not try it?
No.